Good afternoon. I'm Julia Coakley and I'm Head of Operations. And on behalf of the MGAA, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon, which is being hosted by Insure TV. And I'd like to introduce Gillian Ball, Commercial Director, and Sophia Garrity, Broadcast Journalist. Gillian and Sophia will also be joined by Craig Walton, Chairman and CEO, Mark Colgate, Editorial Director, and Jenna Dagenhart, North America Anchor. Gillian leads the strategic planning and business development for Insure TV. She joined Think Digital Group, which owns Insure TV, in 2013 to head up the digital marketing initiatives for the business. Gillian chairs the company's Global Marketing Forum, sharing knowledge across the businesses and across borders. Whilst new to Insure TV, Sophia is not new to insurance. Sophia is set to anchor Insure TV's flagship programme, Masterclass, and has already moderated interviews, thought leadership debates, and produced news updates for the Insure TV audience. Sophia champions the relationships with the Insure TV insurance professional community of over 100,000 brokers, risk professionals, MGAs, and insurers globally. Previously, Sophia was a journalist at Trading Risk, part of the Insurance Insider, and in 2019 was shortlisted for the Most Promising Newcomer Award at the Bieber Journalist and Media Awards. So Sophia, if I might hand over to you.
Thank you, Julia. So firstly, I would like to thank the MGAA today for inviting us to present. I think with video and educational video, a lot of it can be about telling. Today, we've decided to show you everything that business video can do for you. So as well as being live here in the studio, I'll also be going to some pre-recorded content. So we found that two things really standing out for educational video are interactivity and CPD. So to tell you more about them today, I'm passing over to my colleague, Gillian.
Thank you so much, Sophia. So to start off today, we are going to go through the learning outcomes that you should be able to get out of this session. So just to go through this, by the end of this event, delegates will be able to identify specific ways to implement video into their businesses, identify what makes a great video and preparation needed pre-filming, and understand the benefits of virtual conferencing and identify how it differs from physical events. So what we're going to do now is cut to a pre-recorded session that we did a little earlier.
So it's often said that one of the most valuable things MGAs offer the insurance market is expertise. But how can MGAs use video to showcase that expertise? Here to help me answer this question, I am joined by Gillian Ball, our Commercial Director, Craig Walton, our CEO and Chairman, and over in the US, Jenna Dagenhart, our US Anchor. So Gillian, to start off, can you give us a little bit of background on Insure TV?
Yeah, absolutely. So Insure TV was initially created to better connect the insurance industry. So we started with insurance companies, connecting them with brokers, particularly where they weren't local, and have expanded that out to include MGAs. We work with trade bodies as well, so like Bieber and MGAA as well, and also InsurTechs.
And who is the main audience for Insure TV?
So we reach 100,000 insurance professionals across the globe. So it's mainly UK and the US. And we particularly, why people use Insure TV is for CPD. So anytime someone watches a video on the Insure TV website, it's automatically logged on their CPD statements, and they can access that and send it directly into the CII.
So coming over to you, Craig, why did you decide to set up business-to-business TV?
Do you know, it was a natural progression. At the end of the day, in any marketing mix, you've got to find ways of talking to your customers, the most effective way of talking to your customers. And when you're in a B2B environment, you have the advantage that you know who all your customers are, but you have the disadvantage that all your competitors know who your customers are. So effectively, it's a race for the door for everyone to talk to them. So you need to find some really high quality ways of setting up communication. And the way I see it is, if you imagine that door, you're coming at people through conferences, through face-to-face meetings, and what video does is give you another way of walking through that door to spend some face time with your customers. So it's a really natural progression. And if you look at the wider world, people use video, TV, whatever it is, to pick up information, to gather information. And I couldn't see any reason why anyone in business wouldn't be using the same medium to pick up the information.
And do we see people kind of using video more since the pandemic?
Oh, I think that's so natural. I think if anyone would say, are we going to get global adoption of video for business? 2020 answered that question. Whether it's from Zoom, whether it's from looking at Netflix, you just look at the data consumption that's going through the web these days, and it's largely driven by video communications. I know it's everything from a cat chasing a woolen ball around the room, right through to high-end learning, and that's. I just think you have to say there's a whole waterfront of ways in which you can use video, and provided in your marketing mix you really set up what your objectives are, video is a terrific tool for reaching end customers.
And coming over to you in the US, Jenna, obviously there's different mediums in journalism. We've got print, for example. Why is video such a powerful tool?
Well, obviously, as a broadcast journalist, Sophia, I'm a little bit biased here, but I really do think it's just a really effective way to communicate. I mean, Craig outlined a lot of the benefits, but I think it just really engages people, draws them in, and it's as close as you can get to physically being together. You're seeing somebody on screen, you feel like you know them, and it's just a great way to connect, I think.
Yeah, we used to always refer to that as, you're seeing the whites of their eyes. If you think of all the other forms of communication that you take over when you're doing B2B communications, except when you're in a conference. And even then, it's hard to see the whites of their eyes. But when you put an expert on screen asking them the difficult questions, you see their reactions.
And you mentioned, Craig, how everyone's using video these days. If there are any MGAs watching who don't use video, why do you think they should start using it?
I just don't think there's a reason why they should not. I'd almost reverse the question. And when I look back and think about how people have marketed professional services over the years, a lot of it used to be sort of face-to-face conferences and meetings, and it was relatively low tech. But as time progressed, people realized you had to polish up your presentation. You were actually portraying your brand in everything you're doing. And video really does help an MGA project its brand, put its leaders forward, allow them to talk through ideas and product innovations that other mediums they'd find it very difficult to do that.
We talked a lot kind of about how video is useful, but Gillian, can you kind of give us some examples of how you actually would use video? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when clients come to me where they want to be doing a video project, I really like to work with them more as a marketing consultant as opposed to just a outside video expert. So it's really trying to become part of their team, understand what their priorities are, and then we can create video to meet their needs. So the kind of two questions initially I would always ask are, why? So why are we creating this video? And I think that's a really, really important one to answer. And who? And who is it going to be targeted to? So if we start with the why, something like a new product or a brand relaunch. Just did something for one of the big brokers. They needed to launch their brand during the pandemic. So we were able to create a website specifically for them with their internal teams in mind. And that's just one of the examples of what we can do for groups.
But yeah, I think you'd agree that video is not the magic bullet for everything.
No, absolutely not.
There are ways in which you use it and ways that you don't. And if you imagine that its primary purpose is about research and education. If you stick at the research and education level, there are lots and lots of ways for it to work. When you say it's about promotion or it's an advert, it's very easy to click that button to stop watching a video.
Even further than that, though, it can be. There's other ways to think about it, right? So an event where you get how many no-shows not turning up to an event, and you want to be able to still get that message to them because they were potential buyers as well. So social media, that's a whole nother way just to be able to engage with people, where it is a little bit about brand, but like you said, it can be lots of scrolls. I actually have a case study I could refer to as well, where we had a client that had a social media promotion they did with us. There was 2,500 views of that video, and yes, like you said, lots of them were scrolling past, just kind of quick views. But we actually uploaded a 10-minute version of that video, and 75 people watched that. So to actually be able to, create a video that you can put the full 10-minute version on social, and 75 of your potential clients who, this was to a targeted audience, are watching the full version of that, I think is incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, and it's data driven. I mean, Jenna will tell you from the States, I mean, you could say people are time poor. And a lot of our experience is coming from very large audiences in the US and what's happening there.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I would just weigh in as well that, not all video is created equally. And as Jillian highlighted, it depends on your platform too. And that's going to draw in different viewers and just tell a different story as well.
I guess on that point, Jenna, I mean, I think Craig touched on it. We've seen a huge increase in demand for CPD content online. What to you are the benefits of a virtual conference over, say, an in-person conference when things do open up again?
Well, as someone who just hosted a South Africa panel for a conference this morning, I'm obviously based here in the US, which is why I can't be with you in the London studio right now. But I mean, that's just one of the many examples of how you can bring people together at these conferences without the barriers of the flights or the hotel or the travel time. I mean, a lot of our viewers are very busy, very intelligent people who don't have the most time in the world. So we want to make the most of that time and bring them together. And then I think another really interesting way that these conferences, especially the hybrids and the virtual ones, bring people together. And one of the benefits, I'm actually going to ask you a question. What do you think is one of the benefits of these conferences?
You get to meet new people and you get to see their personalities as well. And, you would see a speaker talk about something. And I think, it's so much more powerful watching someone speak than if, say, you read an article they wrote or something like that, because you kind of see how they really present things. So it's definitely to kind of get a sense, get a sense and kind of feel of an industry all in one place.
But I've got to say, my answer, Jenna, is that I'm old school. So my first thoughts were that when people would go and do conferences online, I thought, conferences are all about meeting up for a coffee and then a beer later on. It's not about it's not about doing this online. Actually, having attended now a couple of virtual conferences, I think when they're done well, they are excellent. If there are two parts of a conference, it's the transfer of information and it's the social interaction. Sure, the social interaction can never be the same. However, I'd caveat that by saying I went into some side room chats which were much easier to set up than just wandering around a conference hall when the happenstance of bumping into the person you wanted to meet. I could do it online. So I take back my words a little bit in that area. But in terms of the transfer of information, it was infinitely better transfer of information.
Yeah, so especially to follow up on your last point there, Craig, we ran a survey of viewers to reflect on their thoughts around virtual events. And when we asked how to make virtual conferencing better, 23% said networking. And just to share some quotes from that survey, one of them, attendees should not shy away from virtual networking. And then we need communication between participants and attendees beyond formal Q&A sessions. And I mean, I agree, Craig, it can be a bit of a maze sometimes wandering around those huge conference halls. And it's nice, as you can see, you all have earpieces in, you can hear each other, we can communicate as if we all are right there together.
So Jillian, one for you now. Insurance is famously known as a very face-to-face market. How has the market kind of picked up video content in your view?
One thing around virtual conferencing, it's definitely here to stay. I think the audiences view it as something different than physical events as well, where yes, you may not be getting the whites of your eyes networking, but really just being able to create new ways to harness those touch points with people as best we can in a virtual environment. I think one of the examples, again, around virtual conferencing that's really, really great is these meeting rooms. So where you're able to have a one-to-one conversation with the person that you've chosen to talk to as well. In a face-to-face physical environment, you might get 2-3 minutes of their time in a hall. Now in a virtual environment, they'll give you 15 minutes and you'll get that meeting and be able to have an initial conversation with a prospect. And I think that's incredibly powerful, and we shouldn't underestimate that. Where we're talking about how time poor everyone is, where these virtual events are creating some really good opportunities like that as well.
And Craig, we do all now have access to video. We've all got mobile phones, some with really good kind of high quality cameras. Is mobile phone video, is that enough for businesses to use?
We can't say no, because there's been a proliferation of video on camera, so you'd never want to exclude anything. At the end of the day, we're in an attention economy, okay? Lots of people have lots of things hitting them in lots of different ways. I think any marketeer, anyone at any of the MGAAs, has to be ready to use all the tools at their disposal. So part of that may be using mobile communication, part of it will be just using online, and part of it using methods that are seen as traditional, conferencing through to face-to-face meetings. But it's a mix, and you've just got to look at the mix and decide what are the optimum levels to use for each of those ingredients.
And Jenna, I guess on that point of preparation for video, I know that you hosted a kind of information panel earlier this year with Prudential on how to prepare for video. What are some of your kind of key tips on preparation and kind of getting the most from your video content?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sophia, and I was honored to help out with that initiative with Prudential. And just to share a few of the tips that I shared with them, I would say it's important to prepare bullets versus memorizing your answers word for word. That's a Herculean task, and even as someone who does this professionally every day, I would never recommend memorizing everything word for word. You are the expert in your field. You have practiced in this field. You are the professional. So on that note, there's no need to be nervous either when someone's interviewing you or, you're presenting. You could talk about these topics in your sleep. So no need to be nervous. And if you are a little nervous, sometimes you can use pauses to your advantage to help catch your breath, or even emphasize points as well. And just to help you kind of keep your footing, I recommend if someone offers you water before you go on, take the water. It'll help you. It'll just, calm you down and help you in the breaks. And, also don't be too hard on yourself. Everybody has little stumbles. Everybody, messes up. And I think it makes you human. It makes you relate to people, and they're going to find that engaging when it doesn't sound like you're just reading or you're not being sincere. And on that note, I would also act like you're talking to a friend or a colleague as you're filling up your coffee. No need to be overly formal. I think, use your normal tone, and just take advantage of the taped format as well. People often say, what? I can redo an answer if it is taped. Obviously, live is a different ballgame, but if you have the luxury of doing something taped, you can always go back and redo an answer, but don't get too used to it. People say, oh no, I wish I had this feature in everyday real life where I could just redo things.
Thanks, Jenna. And turning back to you, Gillian, I'm going to speak more about this with our editorial director, Mark Colgate. But how long should video be?
For the kind of short and sharp, either brand videos or animations or things that you're creating for social media, I'll get into social media in a second, but you really want to be sticking to around 90 seconds. So something that's quite short, sharp, and to the point. Where there's a little bit of an exception on social media is kind of what I referred to before on the where you were getting engagement of 10 minutes. A lot of social media strategies that I work on with clients will actually create two versions of video for social media. So the clip version, which is the very typical kind of, like I said, 90 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, kind of depending on what you're doing, and then the longer 10-minute version. So really take advantage of the fact that LinkedIn and Instagram give you that 10 minutes to be able to create content of that length as well. For longer form videos, so what you were talking about earlier, Craig, on the learning content. So we actually have a series called Masterclass where we create thought leadership pieces with different insurance professionals around the table. Jen, I know you moderate a lot of debates as well in the States. Really, we found the best engagement was around the 38 to 40 minute mark, where it's a little bit long. It obviously needs to be at least 30 minutes long for CPD requirements, but just a little bit longer than that, we didn't see a drop off in engagement. So if ultimately with this, content is king though. So, if you're wanting to create, if you have the content to create something, people will listen if the content's good. So again, that in-between piece where you're creating the 10-minute piece for social media. Similarly, if you have a story to tell, if it's a quarterly update or something like that, we don't really see a drop-off until about 10 minutes. So from 1 to 10 minutes, you really still have that engagement as long as the content can hold it through.
And Jenna, you've clearly got a great from-home setup there. What tips would you give people to improve their video from home setup?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Sophia. And I do host a lot of the masterclass events that Jillian mentioned. And, it's interesting. I do have a full-blown studio right here with a green screen and a lot of big lights that are just as blinding as the New York studio. But many people on those masterclass panels don't, have a full setup like this one. And many people don't need a full kitted out setup just like mine. So I'll share a couple of pointers for recording via Zoom in general and then enhancing your home setup, whatever that might look like. So one, use natural light to your advantage. Ring lights can be helpful if you don't have a ton of natural light, if you're in an apartment or somewhere like that. And then I would say framing is also important. Hopefully the production team thinks my framing right now is decent, but a few things you can do to help with that would be stacking books to help make sure that your camera is level. Don't stress if you don't have a green screen. As I mentioned, many people don't. But one other cool thing as kind of a replacement for a green screen are those pop-ups. We've all seen them at conferences. They go from the floor up. You can bring them on the airplane. I've seen a lot of people using those, especially people who are on the road. I feel like that works well for them. And move as close as you can to the Wi-Fi, wherever that might be in your house. And depending on where your camera is, on your computer, on your filming device, it can be human nature to look at whoever is speaking on the device versus looking into the actual camera. So a simple tip, but we recommend putting a Post-it note near the camera. That way you're actually looking into the camera. And then this one probably goes without saying, but if you are using a green screen, do not wear green. You will be floating, even if it's just a little piece on your tie or something like that. And I would say also don't worry about muting yourself if you are recording something via Zoom, because even if it feels like Zoom in the moment, our production team can work wonders, and they're recording lines separately so that if someone's child or dog were to enter the conversation as well, they can always cut that out without it impacting everyone. So yeah, there's a lot to help with your setup, but don't stress too much. And I know Jillian is always putting together helpful resources for everyone. So I believe she has a document, right, Jill?
Yeah, so in the resources, I think it's called the resources tab. We'll have to double check that. But where you guys are actually watching this today, there's a resources tab, and you'll be able to see all these documents. So the research that we've referred to, I think Jenna's piece is on there as well, and the at-home studio guide, I think is what it's called. So you can see all of that research that we've referred to, and any kind of helpful tips from us too.
Thank you, Jillian. So I'm now going to go and speak to our editorial director, Mark Colgate, on how to create amazing editorial video content.
So you've decided to create video content, but how do you make it great? Here to help me answer that question, I'm joined by our editorial director, Mark Colgate. So Mark, for you, what is the key to creating great video content?
Well, I think there's three things, and I think we're going to unpack them a little later on in this discussion. But the first thing is to make sure the type of filming that you're doing matches the message that's going out. So if you're making an advert, don't make a documentary. The second one is to match the talents of the person that you're filming to the filming job you're asking them to do, particularly in B2B. If somebody hasn't done much filming, to ask them to do a really difficult piece of filming is setting them up to fail. And the third thing is ensuring that the content is right, interesting, and really relevant for the audience.
So there's a lot of content out there right now, especially after the pandemic. What really makes content stand out for you?
I think the thing I always remember is somebody once asked the American writer Elmore Leonard, how come you write such fabulously interesting, exciting books? And he said, oh, it's really easy. I write the book, then I read it, and I cut out all the boring bits. And that's a really sort of good way to think about content, making it interesting. And the thing with the video is it's very much like a newspaper article. Get the really interesting bits up the top, because that's what's going to hook people in and keep them watching your video.
And when you're working with clients, how do you prepare for video? How would you recommend preparing for video, whether it's live or pre-recorded?
Well, a lot of it actually is in the prep. I think the crucial thing to think about filming is that the point at which the filming takes place is the end of the process, not the start. So the first thing I'd always say to people is, if you've got filming coming up and it's in the diary, is what's going to happen on the day. If you've got to be at somebody's studio or somebody's office for filming, get there early like you would for a meeting. It just takes the stress out of it. So that's the first thing, is give yourself that time. The second thing is to make sure that you haven't got any other distractions around. So mobile phones are an absolute killer on this. The third thing with filming is, it's both audio and visual. So with the visual is you want to make sure that people look good. So think about what the dress code is for it. Once they're filmed, they're going to be there for 6 months, 12 months, 24 months on the internet. So, they've got to look their best. Again, with filming, there's not an audience in the room. A lot of people we film with are used to being in front of an audience. They're being at seminars or conferences. So they're used to an audience giving them energy. You don't get that when you're in a studio. You've got to provide it yourself. So you sort of need to tune yourself up to 105, 110%. If you sound involved and interested in what's happening, the audience, the viewers will take their lead from you. And finally, think about what you're going to say. One of the traps people fall into if they've not filmed before is they try and remember tons and tons of content. And what you end up doing is filming them taking and failing a memory test. Whereas if you think in terms of bullet points, it's much, much easier to get your key points across.
So with video, it said that long video is easy and short video is actually harder to create. So if we're making short, snappy, interesting content, how would you prepare for that? Or is that something that you can actually make in post-production?
No, there's always this danger of let's film lots and somewhere in it is a magnificent video. No one's ever written a novel by somebody saying, here's a dictionary, just pick words out at random, it's going to win the Booker. So know exactly what you want to film and film it there and then. For short videos, you're absolutely right, it's much more difficult to do something in 90 seconds than it is in 10, 11 minutes, which is a much more discursive way of filming. At that point, you want to be very tight on the bullet points you're doing, or if you're auto-cueing it, make sure you've got a script that really genuinely will be 90 seconds long.
So what are the different filming formats that we use and when would you use them?
Well, a really good solid format is the head-to-head interview like this. If you're doing a piece that's 5 to 10 minutes long and you want to get into a topic or a product in a little bit of detail, and you want the interviewer to be there sort of representing the viewer, that works best. If you want to talk directly to the audience but without anybody between you, then it's a piece to camera. And there's sort of two ways of doing that. Either you can talk directly to the camera, but keep it short and sharp, because ultimately, what you're really doing in the studio is talking to a piece of plastic, metal and glass, and it's not easy. A way around that is to go with an auto cue, which essentially is putting the script over the front of the camera. Now, the good news about that is you're saying exactly what you want and need to say, but be really careful. You've got to sound as if you're speaking, not reading a script. Another really effective way of getting short, sharp, punchy pieces of information across, particularly for those who aren't experienced at talking to a camera, is to film them speaking to somebody off camera. It's a sort of fly on the wall approach, if you like. Now, I know a lot of video these days is about keeping it very short and very punchy, but actually you can produce some quite long videos, particularly in a business-to-business format, and people will watch them, particularly for things like CPD. And that's where a sort of a panel session can work really well. Anything over 10 minutes, get 2 or 3 people involved, each with their own area of expertise. You can cover a lot of ground, and the visuals, there's a lot of variety in the visuals. And finally, over all of these, we can put animations or graphics, which can really bring individual points to life.
And what to you are the benefits of live versus pre-recording, or potentially using a mixture of both?
Well, the real advantage of live is, one, everybody has to be there or it doesn't happen. So it really does concentrate minds, particularly if you want to get a lot of people together. As I said, a lot of it's in the prep, and a key part of the prep is getting people there. So it makes that happen. It also allows you to be perhaps a little bit more interactive, because you can, often you can send in questions, and if you've got an audience involved, that really can get a real sort of buzz going. So those are the advantages of live. Potential downside, people will say, is, what happens if something goes a bit wrong on the day? Well, The truth is, if you've got somebody who's pretty experienced chairing the panel, it's very easy to paper over those cracks, and you can always lose it for the replay. The other way of filming is pre-recording it, as you say. Great advantage of that is you can make it look a lot more polished, or a little bit more polished. The downside is you've got to make sure you recreate that sort of sense of punch, and that everybody's absolutely on their mettle. If anyone's sat there thinking, I can always do another take, it can really slow the recording process down and take a little bit of energy out of the piece. And in terms of a mix, I mean, actually, this is one thing we found with lockdown. The great thing about pre-records is it allows people who couldn't make your event, either as particularly as a speaker, to be at your event. You can pre-record them and play them as if they were live, even if you recorded them 2 weeks before. And we've seen a lot of clients making use of that. It allows people who can't be there to be there.
Thanks for that, Mark. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas on how you can use video for your business. Now I'm going to show you a quick animated video. This style is ideal for product launches or corporate brand videos.
Welcome to Insure TV, connecting you direct to industry experts with deep dive expert videos on the topics that matter, with subjects ranging from aviation and cyber to terrorism and everything in between. We take the complex, explain it, and make it accessible so you can use Insure TV for your continuous professional development. Our masterclass sessions keep you informed with groundbreaking thought leadership on a range of themes. And in our news programs, we unearth the insights and trends, helping you keep your finger on the pulse of what matters. When you visit Insure TV, you can follow what's new, what's hot, and what your peers are saying about everything that shapes your world. The bottom line, the more you watch, the more you learn.
Hello and welcome back to the studio. So the good news is it sounds like quite a few of you are already using video for your business, which is excellent and great to hear. If you did have any comments or any kind of thoughts on how you're finding videos so far, please do comment on this. We've also had some really good questions come in. So I'm going to move to the first question now. So this is for you, Gillian. Most of our business comes from our existing network and industry contacts. Why should we use video?
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many clients where this is exactly the case, where they have their existing network, they're not really looking to massively expand. And I think one of the things to remember is video isn't a silver bullet. So I think Craig may have referred to this in our panel as well, where it should be used as part of your marketing strategy. Retention is so important just with clients as well, and being able to use video as part of your retention strategy, I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think, in insurance, a lot of business, it's well known, it's face-to-face business. A lot of business comes from existing contacts and network and, people know in the industry. But video can be kind of used alongside that and kind of just to kind of cement their relationships and kind of, especially working from home.
Absolutely. And even like personalized videos as well, where you can kind of customize really short things, just quick, sharp videos as well. It doesn't need to be like a full-fledged studio setup to be able to use video as part of your customer journey as well, where it's just interaction, it's catching up. It may give you that slight edge in terms of being able to really be memorable with your clients.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if I decide to make a video, how long will it be relevant for?
Oh, I think that one really depends. So we on Insure TV keep all of our content up for 12 months. So regardless of if it was a quarterly update and you really only think it's going to be relevant for that quarter, it's really nice for viewers to be able to go back a quarter later, look at that quarterly update, look back on the content beforehand and kind of see what's changed as well. So I would say it's going to depend on what the content is. A lot of the things that we create, like in the studio with things like this, we try to create evergreen content with clients where they're able to create a really nice video for their website. It's still going to be relevant in 12, 18 months time, and you might need to tweak it or something if you decide to rebrand or have an update. But I think, generally speaking, it's going to depend on the content. But it's nice to be able to have videos to be able to refer back to as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now, okay, we've got video is expensive. How do I justify the costs?
Okay, so I'm gonna have to disagree that video is not expensive because you can do it basically for free with really, really cheap and cheerful videos. If you're not doing video at the moment, I think most of you guys said you were, which is great. If you're not doing video though, at least get started just getting comfortable, getting in front of the camera, talking to your clients in that way where they're able to kind of have that experience. But we actually did, I don't think it's actually one of the things that we included in any of the studies that's on the resources tab, but we did something probably about 18 months ago now, where we took video and compared it to other mediums as well. And it is by far one of the most cost-effective ways, not just in terms of touch points compared to other marketing, but also like think of all of the conferences in tandem with going to conferences. You can do video online training. You guys are doing an hour of CPD in your lunch hour as well, which again is really, really great to be able to have that option.
Next up, do you think people will still use video when they go back to the office? I think this is a really interesting one because obviously things have changed so much in the last year and video has been used more, but I feel like that people still definitely use video. I think firstly, so many of the big insurers have kind of come out and said that we're not actually kind of going back to how things were. We're doing a hybrid model. A lot of our kind of staff want to work from home. So there's still going to be, I think, like many days when people are still working from home and video. And then I also think, if people build up video brands, have been watching video in the past year, I think that's going to stay, I'm in the office and I'll still watch videos that I found in lockdown and, people I know are interested in. So I think it definitely stays.
I think actually for a lot of companies, it kind of pushed you into doing video a lot faster than some companies would have. So coronavirus kind of has been an example of where people are just like, okay, no, we have to interact in this way. And a lot of businesses have proven that they can interact virtually as well. And I do think it's here to stay. I think it will be something that's different than physical events. It'll be something that's different than the face-to-face meetings, but not instead of. I think the two things are important to go hand in hand.
Yeah, so people kind of stumbled across it by accident in lockdown, but found they quite liked it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I've written content, but no video. Can I use this for content or do I need to start from scratch?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that's a great starting point. A lot of clients could have a blog where they're using written content already, or white papers that they've created. White papers are such a great starting point to be able to create video around. So I think there's kind of two different ways you can look at this. Some of the really short and sharp content, you can use video to expand it out even more. So you can have a 2-pager that you've had somebody write up for you within the business, and then be able to do a panel discussion, for example, and deep dive into some of that research where that could be really interesting. Or the longer form versions where you have a really lengthy white paper that goes into all of the details, to be able to use video on the other side and create a short, sharp version for social media, for example, or for your website to accompany the white paper, where it entices people to go on, watch the content, to be able to get some of the key takeaways from the white paper. And then maybe the call to action is them clicking on the white paper, downloading it, and being able to interact in it with that way. So you can create more opportunities to be able to have more eyeballs on the written content as well through video, or use it just to replace it as well.
Definitely. I think it's that idea again that it's not always one or the other. You can use both, and some potential clients like written content, some like video. You're capturing both by doing both, so that does make a lot of sense. Getting speakers to agree to do video is really tough. Okay, so some people just might not want to speak on video. How do I get around this?
I think Mark touched on this a little bit in your one-to-one that you guys went through as well. So some people they just really don't want to do video, and that's probably not the place to start with trying to convince them to get them on. Try to find the people who are like, oh, that could be interesting, and get them engaged in a pre-recorded format to start with. Maybe just do a really quick interview format where it's a little bit less pressure than kind of doing something a little bit longer form, or to do a panel discussion and just dive straight in with a live panel or something like that. And once you have that one piece, you can then say, oh, okay, I can do this. And then your colleagues can see it and you can build on that as well. For some of the people who really just don't want to use video or they don't want to be involved, maybe you can engage in video in a different way. So doing things like the animation videos or the motion graphics where you're still able to get that message across, but not kind of force them into doing something they don't really want to be doing as well.
Last question, so this is a really interesting one. How do I know if my video was successful?
I think it kind of depends whether you are on a tactical video journey or a strategic video journey. So success could be, if it's a tactical, you've not really done a lot of video before, use that first video as a benchmark to then be able to monitor, okay, how did it do compared to the first one that we did? If it's a more strategic approach where you're saying, here's our 12-month, 18-month plan that we're going to be implementing these videos for, agree what success looks like at the beginning. And then you can use that, but constantly adjust it, change it, take the insights that you get from MI and then adjust, get feedback. I think that's incredibly powerful just to be able to just see what your audience is thinking about that type of content. And then use that to measure success.
That's all we have time for. I'm going to pass back to Julia.
Once again, thank you to Insure TV and Craig, Gillian, Mark, Jenna and Sophia for delivering an interesting presentation. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Please don't forget to provide your feedback and look out for forthcoming MGAA events. And do stay on for the summary of learning objectives for this particular presentation if they're relevant to your learning and development programme. Have a great day.